Alright, so this month we've got a new sensor here. It's a vibration sensor. And you'll notice right away that one leg is thicker than the other leg. And we match this on the PCB. So we've got to make sure that we get it in the right orientation. But basically this is just a switch and it will detect simple vibrations. Also, we've got a electrolytic capacitor. This also is polarized, so you'll notice a white stripe with a negative symbol on it. So that's our ground leg. And we want to make sure that that matches our white stripe on the PCB when we put it in. That side is ground. Now our resistor doesn't matter as far as orientation goes, but our transistor does. You'll notice on the PCB that there is a rounded dome on one side, in the same way with the top of the transistor if you look at it. So you want to make sure that goes in the correct way. Same thing with the LEDs. We want to make sure that the long leg goes into the positive marked hole, and you'll also notice a lot of your LEDs will actually have a flat on the ground side, so we can match that up with the silkscreen on the PCB. So let's get started putting this together. The battery will go on the back, and we'll see what this thing actually does. Alright, so again, normally what I like to do is start with the smallest component. I'm just going to kind of flex our legs out a little bit on everything to get everything ready to go. And we'll do some test fitting. Make sure it fits in there pretty snug. That guy's pretty good. Now on our vibration sensor, we've got to bend our legs because we want it to lay inside of the PCB. So what I'm going to do is just kind of take my fingernail and bend both legs at 90 degrees, being very careful, so that once I drop those guys in here and I solder them in place, you see we give you plenty of room to make that bend wherever you need. Mine's very close to the edge, but you can bend it kind of wherever you like in there, just to make sure you've got enough room. So we have this guy ready, and our resistor here. Pull our paper, and we'll get that guy bent over. So resistor's the closest to the board, so we're going to do that first. So I like to get it in there. We'll flip it over, kind of bend the legs out a little bit, and then get ready soldering. Now we've had a few questions on soldering, how to get the best solder joint possible, I guess, is one of the main questions that we get. And with a lot of our PCBs, we have ground planes, which is the entire board is basically a copper fill, which means it takes more heat to get a better solder joint. And to kind of show the best way to do that, you want to heat the component leg up as well as the pad on the board at the same time as best as you can. And what you'll see is, I'm going to do it real quick. So a lot of people will just hold heat long enough just to get a little bit of solder on there. And what this does is it doesn't make a good mechanical connection to the actual pad itself. So you want to hold heat long enough to where you're going to heat that entire copper plane, and you'll see it just kind of flow and fill the entire pin area in, just like this. So that's when you know you have enough heat on there to make an entire round, nice fillet of solder all the way around that leg. We'll go ahead and do the other side now too. And you get a really nice clean fillet of solder all the way around. So we'll trim these guys. Alright, so the next guy, let's do the transistor. Alright, so I've already brought our legs out a little bit so that it matches the pin out here. We'll slide this guy in, and I'll bend the outside legs out just a touch, just to kind of pin it in place. I'm going to start with the middle hole, just because it's easy to bridge. And by bridge on solder, it means you connect two pins together accidentally, and I don't like that to happen. I mean, not many people do. So we want to do the middle hole first. That way it gives me the chance to go on either side and I can kind of see where solder already is. Now this left hole that I'm doing, if you look really closely at the board, you'll notice that it's connected to the ground plane. So this one's going to take more heat than normal, just like before with the resistor. We want to apply heat, and you may have to hold it a little extra longer. Then we'll get that nice bead of solder. This guy should go fairly fast on the other side. So we've got 3 nice beads on those. We'll trim these guys off. Alright. So next, closest to the board really, I guess, is in the board. We're going to run our vibration sensor. So what we'll do there, just kind of bend it over. I'm going to give a little extra on these guys. Now both of these, looking at the front, we've got traces coming off. So these don't need a whole lot of heat like the ground planes. So we should be fairly quick with applying heat here. So I'm going to clean my iron, make sure it's good and clean. Touch the big leg first, then I'll do the small leg. Alright, and you notice mine bent in a little bit right there, but all I'm going to do is just bend it right back out, just with a gentle amount of pressure. There we go, just to make sure it's straight. Now trim the back side. So we'll go LED next. So again, make sure the long leg on these LEDs is positive. So we're going to slide that guy in to the positive side. And we'll do my trick that I like to do. I mean, you can balance this guy. Sometimes I like to just kind of hold it by finger, and I'll make a little loop of solder and get in there with the soldering iron. It's a little harder to keep everything, like as far as the solder, aligned with the board. For me, it's a little bit easier. That way I can hold the component in place and make sure it's not wobbling around. But if you need to lay it down, you can still do that and do the solder, and then you can pick it back up, and it's since the solder is on there, and you can make sure you can heat that pad up again and make sure that the LED is straight on the board and not crooked. So we've got ours ready to go. I'll trim this guy off here. Alright. And last but not least, actually not last, we still have a battery connector on here. But we'll go ahead and put our capacitor on. And again, the white stripe is our negative side, so we want to match it with the white stripe on the board. We'll slide this guy in, and we will flip it around. Now the negative side, again, is going to be attached to that ground plane, so we want to make sure we apply enough heat to get a nice fillet of solder. And you'll see it when it works. It will fill that entire circle and just look really nice. Another thing that helps too is cleaning your iron. You know, make sure you've got a wet sponge. I also like having just a little copper like Brillo pad. That you can get these solder cleaners fairly inexpensive, just to make sure you don't have an overabundance of solder on your tip, because that will actually take away some of the heat when you're trying to apply it. So all of our solder joints look good so far. Our battery connector will go last, and we have to match the silk screen to the battery. We'll slide it in there, and all of that's going to happen to this side, so we should be able to keep it fairly flat. Now this is a good example of it's not going to stay, so what I want to do is pin one side, and then I can adjust once I get it together for a good mechanical seat. And then while I've got heat on it, I'm going to push down on the other side and then let this side cool off, which should now mechanically hold it so where this other pin is coming through, if that makes sense. And I can just apply a little bit of heat there, get that guy going. And that's it for the kit this month. It's a fairly simple one. So let's pop the battery in, check out and see what it does. And then when we tap on it, it just creates a little heartbeat. And just to go over a little bit about this circuit, what it does, so our vibration sensor, well actually it's just a switch. It's a power on switch, if you will. And going through this resistor and the transistor, what we're doing is we're charging this large capacitor. So you can kind of think of a capacitor as like a battery that will take a charge very quickly, and it will also dissipate a charge very quickly. So we're charging it up, and then through the transistor we're feeding, we're turning the LED back on. But by limiting the amount of power going through the transistor from the resistor, we're able to create that cool fade out effect that you see there. And then by attaching our lanyard, and now you can wear this and show off your cool kit. Thank you guys for subscribing. We'll see you guys next month.